Okay, so it has been a while since I've actually done a video for YouTube, which is kind of crazy. And as you can tell, it looks a little different, my background and everything. And this is gonna be a super unedited, like edited video, so like by all means, it could be super long. Don't really know. Haven't really tried to like think about what I'm gonna say. I'm just kind of going with the flow. So this could be a total disaster, but we'll figure it out. I just know it's 2024. I kind of want to start getting back into like just making a few videos here and there for YouTube. And I thought, what better way to start that off than actually talk about some of the movies that I loved, didn't like, some big surprises, and also movies that were just kind of disappointments, honestly. So might be good, might not be bad. Just kind of like I was expecting more. So without further ado, we're gonna go through a bunch of them. So I'm gonna start off, I think, with my best movies this year. I'm not going to try and go too deep into this because I could be here for a long time, but I also want to talk about some honorable mentions because we had a few. I would say this year for movies in particular was kind of a hit or miss for me. I think they had there was a lot of good movies out there, but there wasn't a lot that I would say like were wow, this really does compare to some of the best of the years for movies. Um, and I would say probably the biggest thing is just there's a lot more disappointments or movies that I was expecting a little bit more out of them, and I just didn't get that from 2023, which was kind of sad. But we're gonna talk about some of the honorable mentions, and like I said, I'm gonna try and be vague with spoilers as much as I can. I'm sorry if I butcher names or if I don't know a lot of the directors and all that, but I just kind of thought I would talk about it. So the first honorable mention is a movie. I think it's an Argentina movie. It's called When Evil Lurks. It is probably the most messed up horror film I've seen in a little while. It's just gloomy. Like it's very gloomy, bleak. Essentially what happens in this one is you follow two brothers and they're kind of just grunt workers. They don't really have like an occupation. They just kind of help whoever out in the town. And then they hear one day that there's something going on in the town. They go and investigate a house and they find out that there is a family and they've been trying to hide their one son because their son is possessed by like a devil or a curse. And the whole kind of thing goes, well, you can't kill the devil or you can't kill who's ever possessed or that town will get possessed. So what they try and do is they try and get the dead moved out of the town, certain distance away, try and dump the body, or I think they were gonna kill it. And they think, okay, we did this, our hands are clean, it's not gonna affect us. And little do they know that actually the evil is found a way to kind of get back to like the hub of the town and people are just doing messed up stuff. Like it's kind of like this the typical children kind of get possessed. They're kind of like the evil henchmen for the devil or like the evil doer. And my god, it is a depressing movie. It's it's not a fun watch, but I have to give it a lot of praise that like it was unnerving. I think the last act could have been a little bit better, but as a whole, it definitely does kind of give you like, wow, this is what a good true horror film should feel like instead of a lot of the movies that kind of come out where it feels copy and paste. There's some creative things that happen. There's some shocking moments. There's a part, I would say, halfway through this movie with a little girl. And if you've seen When Evil Lurks, you're going to know exactly what scene it was. Threw me off, didn't expect it. And holy cow, it's like a roller coaster ride at times, that movie. So, When Evil Lurks, I'd only recommend this movie if you're really into horror films and you're also kind of okay with feeling like complete shit afterwards because it's that type of movie. It's not a good feel good movie whatsoever. The next movie is called They Clone Tyrone. This is a movie that came out on Netflix and it had Jamie Foxx, John Boyega, and it had another person as well. I'm trying to think of the name. They Clone Tyrone. I think her name is Tina Tanya Paris, and pretty much it is about a town, another town, but they start to notice something very particular is happening where people are dying and they're coming back and they don't really have any memory. And you find out that eventually the town is being cloned and it's pretty much just stayed the status quo of like poverty. And it's a fascinating movie. It's not a movie I think for everybody, but this movie really jived with me quite well. And the funny thing is like the title of the movie kept throwing me off for a while, and I was like, we know what the one character, we know what the characters' names are, and I'm like, none of them are they called this. And then it's eventually you kind of get this revelation towards like the last act of the movie, and you're like, oh my god, that's kind of cool. It's kind of just like a funny like little nod. I don't know, man. This movie was just a blast. The style of the movie is like almost like the 70s. It's got like the film grain and everything. Um, it's a really good watch. It kind of reminds me a little bit of like the movie oh, what's it called? Cabin in the Woods, where you kind of are trying to puzzle things together, and then once you kind of figure out the puzzle, they kind of show you the ends of the operation, and I'm like, that's a really smart and clever kind of thing. Yeah, I had a lot of good performances in that movie, but it was just ultimately like a funny movie. Like it was a good good watch. I just wasn't really expecting a heck of a lot going into this, except for I saw the trailer and I was like, okay, this could just be like a fun kind of like popcorn flick. And I felt like it was actually kind of like a step above that. So I really, really do like They Clone Tyrone. The next movie, which is called Tetris. And this was actually supposed to be based around the creation of Tetris, and it has oh, I can't remember his name right now. Aaron Egerton, I'm pretty sure, as the main person. And the whole idea, the whole premise of this movie is this. You find out that people are Russia's the creator of Tetris, and they don't realize that outside of Russia, people are just using like trying to claim that they have the rights to Tetris. And then once Russia kind of finds out that like, oh, they're doing this, it just starts to kind of have this like back and forth. It's like, you know, big companies trying to buy Tetris. The little guy is trying to be like, hey, we're actually going to preserve and we're going to do good by you, Russia. It's a wild movie. It's a really good kind of like, I don't even know how to describe it because like it's like a back and forth like drama, but then it has moments where there's like a shootout and gunfight. And reading up on it, some of the stuff didn't happen. Some of it is like exaggerated, which was kind of a bummer. And I'm like, that kind of makes sense because some of the stuff seems a little far fetched, just a little bit. But I think it was just a fun watch, honestly. It was a very fun watch. I think it's on Apple TV. So if you want to give that a watch, absolutely. Once again, it is very much a dialogue heavy film. There's a few sprinkles of action and like stuff going on, but like it is very much just about the relationships between documents and like, you know, forging things, and eventually just like that relationship between the creator of Tetris and like the company that eventually, you know, has the right to sell Tetris worldwide. It's a fun movie. It's a fun movie. The next movie is Air, which came out in March, and it has Ben Affleck, Matt Damon. I'm trying to think who else was in it. Viola Davis, and it is the story of Nike trying to become the sponsor for Air Jordan, and how they were kind of at the bottom of the barrel when it comes to like the NBA, like the shoes, and trying to be a, you know, like a household name in that type of market. And it's a fun watch as well. I think that's the thing I can always say about these honorable mentions is like I think they're all really good. It's just they're missing a little something to kind of get in my top 10. But great watch, great supporting cast, honestly. The funny thing is with this movie is I remember watching it, really enjoying it, and it didn't it made me like realize like towards the end I'm like you never see Michael Jordan's face whatsoever. Um, and I know that he was actually a producer on the movie. They wanted to get a lot of the stuff right, but that was something that was very interesting. It was you always kind of saw like back shots, like the back of his head, or you just see kind of like his shoulders, and you're like, okay. So that was a very fascinating choice, but still enjoy that a lot. It's interesting. It's kind of like the same thing as like a Tetris, where it's like it's a lot of the back and forth on like companies trying to outbid each other, trying to like pretty much persuade them to go with each other. It's the underdog story of trying to get to like become big, and of course, as you know, Nike nowadays is pretty damn big, and Air Jordans are a massive success. So yeah, The last honorable mention. So there was 5 honorable mentions. The fifth one is this. Past Lives. So this is a movie. I think it's an A24 film. It came out earlier this year as well. I think probably like June, July. And it's a movie about young love. You have these two characters. I think it's in South Korea. They like kind of like best friends. Eventually they start to have feelings for each other. And then of course it's kind of the distance relationship situation where the girl goes to New York, he's still in South Korea, and like they're trying to make this somehow work, but there's just that like tug of war where I don't think he wants to leave South Korea and she wants to stay in New York. And eventually it kind of shows the different eras of their lives and like how things very much change. And I thought this movie was extremely well done. I think it was very close to getting into my top 10, but I think what kind of drove it down a little bit was the last act actually. Um it just I feel like the biggest issue with this movie is kind of like the trope of like this guy just never got over her and never really tried, and the girl was pretty much for the most part like pretty like telling of like, hey, this ain't gonna work. But the guy was very persistent, and he was kind of like, I don't know. Sometimes he rubbed me the wrong way in the movie. But regardless, it was a very good watch. There was some uncomfortable scenes in that movie, but like deliberately. Especially there's a scene at a bar where the spoiler alert, I guess. I'm gonna try and be super vague about this. The one of the partners, the partner of the white or the girl, is there. He doesn't speak Korean at all, and the girl and the guy that had a thing when they were younger are having this conversation, and the expression on his face is like he doesn't know what they're directly saying, but he has some type of inkling, and like, man, it was kind of like heartbreaking at times. And then actually knowing what they're saying too, I don't know, man, it was just a really really good scene. um so yeah, that's my honorable mentions. Number 10 is going to be a very interesting take. It's a movie that I can say confidently is also going to be in another category, and that movie is number 10 is Gran Turismo. I could not believe that I'm saying this. This movie was really good. I can't believe this movie. I feel like it's actually kind of like underrated. Spoiler alert, that's probably going to be one of the categories it's going to be in. The action sequences, like the driving sequences, are actually fairly well done. Um, it's got the tropey story, don't get me wrong, but it's got a lot of heart. I think having oh, what's his name? The guy that is in Stranger Things. Let's see, what's his name again? Should have known this off the bat. David Harbour. Having David Harbour as like the coach, the mentor, I think really does elevate this movie quite a bit. He's just a fun, likable kind of guy in this movie. He's like that heart stern like father figure that the main character needs. And speaking of the main character, he's pretty good. Like I was expecting it to be like the annoying kind of like he's cocky and like he's just kind of annoying, but he's actually done fairly well in this movie. I I don't know what it is. It's like this is why it's not like in the top area of the best movies, but like it does the cliche story so well, on top of having really good car sequences that are pretty frequent. Like, I think sometimes we worry about that where we watch these underdog kind of stories and it's like it's old as build up and then you get the ending and it's like that's kind of it. This movie, it's like consistent racing happening all throughout it, and I really appreciate that. Um, yeah, Gran Turismo was a surprise. I knew I knew the scores were middling. I knew they weren't like super high, but then I was like, okay, I'm gonna watch this anyways. And I just was kind of blown away. I was like, whoa, this movie is way better than I think what it's being given credit for. So yeah, that's my number 10 spot, which was surprising. Number 9 is The Burial. The Burial is a movie that came out on Amazon Prime. Same thing. I knew nothing. I saw this on I saw this like pop up and it had Jamie Foxx, and I'm a sucker for Jamie Foxx. And it also had oh, what's his name? It also had Tommy Lee Jones And I was like, okay, cool. This could be a fun watch as well. And I don't know what it is. I guess I'm really into these true life stories lately because the burial is all based around how there's a monopoly going on with like the funeral homes, and people trying to screw other people over and like claiming their area that they usually do business. And Jamie Foxx's character was a very famous lawyer that only focused on really certain areas, and uh, eventually he got convinced by Tommy Lee Jones to take on the case that he was doing, like the case that he wanted. And yeah, this movie was just a courtroom drama, but it worked really well. I don't know what it was. It was just the same thing. Everyone was super likable. The villains, the greedy company was dastardly evil, and you were rooting for this underdog. And yeah, it was just a fun time. I really, really enjoyed the burial. So I was not expecting it to be up here, but yeah, sometimes that happens. Sometimes it's the underdog movies that kind of come in and swoop it over into my top 10 list. The next movie, number, I think this is my number seventh one, I'm pretty sure. Let me double check. Is, yeah, number seven, or number eight, actually. Number eight is The Holdovers. Okay, so The Holdovers is a movie. Like, it's set in 1970s era, and it's funny. This movie, I watched another YouTuber named Chris Stuckman, and he kind of said very clearly that the director of this movie doesn't like to be have this categorized as a Christmas movie, but this was a Christmas movie, and a very well done Christmas movie. Um, the premise for this movie is essentially there was a boarding school, and the boarding school, at some times of the year, or it's Christmas time, and at certain times of the year, the kids are able to go back and like spend time with their family members. This year, there were several kids that cannot. Parents are saying, "Hey, you can't come home," or there's dilemmas. So what happens is a teacher has to stay back with the cafeteria cook, and they have to kind of watch them over the break. Um, and of course, the story goes as it's the cranky old professor that has to watch, and of course, it's like the kid. It's the main character is a rebellious teen, clearly doesn't like authority and doesn't like to be told what to do. And by the end of the movie, you can kind of see where this is going. They both kind of have a change of heart, but granted, this movie was really well done. It hits some really heavy themes, but also has a lot of comedy. I It's surprising I like this movie because I remember seeing the trailer in theaters, and I was like, this movie just doesn't seem like it's gonna be my jam at all. And with the Christmas break, I was like, you know what? Let's see how this movie is. And this movie, once again, surprised me. I did not expect it to be as good as it was. And it's very, very rare for me to be done a movie and be like, shit, I want to see more of these characters. I know we will probably never see these characters again on the big screen because of where the story ends, but it was very much like, man, I want to see. I'm rooting for these people. I'm hoping that, like, wherever they go in life, it's they can succeed. Paul Giamatti was great in this movie. It's probably one of my favorite performances he's ever done. Like, he does a great job as the cranky professor. And then we also have his name is Dominic Sassa. He was great as the main character. We also had the cafeteria lady. She was amazing. This movie just had so many good scenes in it. Um, it was such a surprise, and it got harder and harder as I was making this list and trying to figure out a good order of like, where is this one gonna go? Where's that one gonna go? Because while I felt like the blockbusters really kind of disappointed in a lot of ways, I felt like the indie movies really stepped it up this year and like really kind of resonated with me. So yeah, the Holdovers was great. The next movie is a movie that I don't think many people have watched, and I don't think probably know a lot about. It's a Swedish movie, I'm pretty sure. It's called The Promised Lands. Um, and let me just tell you, this movie was good. Um, The Promised Lands has Mad Mikkelsen. He is one of my favorite actors. I will watch anything this guy does, whether it's English or it's or Dutch or Danish or whatever kind of like whatever. If it's a foreign movie, I will watch it. That's essentially what I'm trying to say here. And the movie is set in the 18th century Denmark, and it's about a man who grew up in poverty. He became like a captain in the army, and he pretty much like asks and be like, "Hey, there's this area of land in Denmark that you can't grow anything." He's like, "I want to try my best to try and get something going here." And they kind of laugh at him and snicker at him and are like, "You know what? Whatever. It's not like anybody's really doing anything with that land anyways." So he goes there, he starts to kind of make something of it. And of course, somebody that's nearby is threatened by that. And he's like, "Hey, this is my land." And of course, Mad Mickelson's character is like, "No, I got the right from the king or from like the Lord to be able to do this." And the person nearby pretty much makes his life a living hell, stealing people, killing things, all that jazz. It is not like a very action-packed movie at all. It's more just like the stealth kind of tactics of like screwing them over. But this movie was so good. Watching a movie about a man that's just trying to make land grow, like make anything grow in like a huge area, doesn't sound very exciting, but they made this movie like way more exciting than it should be. And the one downside we'll say with this movie, I watched this movie, and of course it's based in the 18th century, based off a memoir, but the memoir is very like hazy and doesn't have all the details. So a lot of this can be said to be made up. Like we don't 100% know the facts, but and that kind of bummed me out a bit. But still, this was an entertaining movie, and the villain in this movie is dastardly evil. Man, when when things go down in that final act, it made me very happy with the outcome of that movie. But yes, The Promised Land is a movie that not many people are going to talk about, but I think it needs to be recognized that it is a great movie. It's an amazing movie. The next one, which is I feel like a movie everybody expects to be on this list, and probably would be expecting it to be even higher, is Killers of the Flower Moon. So I just watched this movie maybe a week or two ago, and this movie was great. Not a movie that I feel like I'm going to watch very frequently because it is a downing subject. It's Martin Scorsese's new film with Robert De Niro and Leonardo DiCaprio, and essentially it is about just human beings really being really shitty, like 100 years ago, trying to take lands from Aboriginal people, and the story goes like this: Robert De Niro's character is just trying to get as much land as possible, and he tells his nephew, Leonardo DiCaprio's character, to marry into the certain family. And then they start to kind of like kill them off, so then they can kind of get all the land themselves. And it's a 3.5 hour movie, and I think the pacing in the middle could have been a little bit better, but for a 3.5 hour movie, it was good. It's very depressing. It's very sad. You can kind of see where the story is going to go with that. Once you kind of figure out what the premise is and like some of the events leading up to, you know, just this whole family just starting to decay and crumble. Um, but it's a movie that I feel like was very important that definitely needed to be made, and I think this year it should definitely be winning some awards, especially that main actress that plays Leonardo DiCaprio's wife. She was great in it. Um, man, it's such a hard movie to watch, and I know it's not going to be for everybody. Her name was Lily Gladstone. She was great in this. She did a phenomenal job. Um, but yes, I can see a lot of people probably watching this and just being like, "Wow, this movie was bleak," and it is a bleak movie, but it was important. I feel like that was what was needed in this movie was it needed to just go straight to the facts of like this is what happened, and it was not a pretty thing whatsoever. So that was my number. That was my number 6 spot. Number 5 is gonna be something I was not even expecting. I love this series. It's a guilty pleasure of mine. I can't believe it that this was as good as it was. I thought the hype was all just going to be baloney because I watched a previous entry and I thought it was okay. That is Godzilla minus one. Yeah. I watched Shin Godzilla a few years back and that got a lot of praise. And I watched it and I was like, this is okay. It's not my favorite Godzilla, whatever. Godzilla minus one, they did something that is very, very rare in a Godzilla film, which is having amazing human characters. I think the premise of this movie alone is really good. Like, we know Godzilla movies have done this in the past where we talk about, the movie's going to be set after World War II. This has been the case a lot of times. But what I really appreciate with this one is like, okay, this one's like right after the event of that, and there is like cities destroyed. It's just crumbled. And the whole first half of this movie is just watching people pretty much trying to recover from this horrible situation with the atomic bomb and just all these bombings that happen. And then you add in the atomic lizard that comes in like halfway through. And my God, he is a force to be reckoned with. He's not like a huge presence in this movie compared to maybe some other Godzilla movies, but when he's there, he is terrifying. His atomic breath that he has in this one is probably one of the deadliest, and I am so grateful I saw this in an IMAX theater because holy shit, that was wild to see. But going back to the human characters, I think the idea of having the main character being supposed to be doing supposed to be a suicide like a kamikaze pilot that's supposed to, of course, just bomb himself, and he doesn't, and then he kind of gets disgraced by everybody in his village, is kind of like, wow, that's a genius kind of way of kind of getting sympathy for this guy. And just everybody in this movie, and I know other reviewers have said this, I've read other things about this, that being like, you're kind of rooting for Godzilla not to kill these certain people. You're rooting to see Godzilla destroy shit and like blow stuff up, but anytime you see one of your like the main characters in that line of fire, you're like, oh God, please, I want to see this. These people have gone through too much already. They need to just live, and that is such an accomplishment. Yeah. So like Godzilla minus one, man, it is a marvel to watch. Holy cow. And the fact that that movie was made on such a minimal budget blows my mind, because some of the set pieces in this, while you can kind of tell, like, sometimes the CGI might not be great, but the idea, the premise, some of the ambition here is like, damn, they are doing things way better than what a lot of the big studios are doing. So, we are down to our top four. I feel like if you know me too well, you probably know what some of these are going to be. But yeah, number four is probably going to be surprising because people are probably going to think this is even higher. It's Oppenheimer. This is a 3-hour drama that is ballsy. It's made by Christopher Nolan, who has made amazing movies. And this movie is like half in color and half in black and white. And I love that. I love it. It is, for the most part, same thing. It's a drama. It's not action. There's not, the atomic bomb makes a very small appearance. It is all about the creation and the aftermath. And I love that. I love that. Cillian Murphy, great as Oppenheimer. What's his name? Robert Downey Jr. He was great as well. The amount of cast or people that are cast in this movie blows my mind. Like, big name actors that are even doing minimal roles show up in this movie, and it's like they know that this was something special, and it very much was. And you're probably wondering, well, why isn't this higher? It's kind of like the same thing about how I felt about Killers of the Flower Moon. The next several movies that I have in my list are movies that I feel like I could enjoy and go back to very frequently. Oppenheimer is a heavy movie. Like, especially that second half, it's a much heavier film than the first half. And also too, I felt like with Oppenheimer, as heavy as it was, there was something that I was hoping for. And I know Christopher Nolan has talked about this. I've read his interviews and stuff like that, saying that he didn't really want to emphasize so much on the destruction and the devastation of the atomic bomb. He didn't really want to depict or show, you can, in your mind, get a picture of what that destruction was. But I actually kind of think I would have liked to see even a little bit of that, because then it really does hit it in the head, being like, he created this greatest the greatest achievement ever in human history, but that has consequences. And if you were to see that, actually the devastation of like, fuck, towns are destroyed, radiation poisoning, all that, I think it would have really hit home about like how much of a toll this really took on him. As the general audience right now, we know, like, this happened about 100 years ago. We know what happened. This is a movie that's probably going to be saved in a capsule because it's that damn good. And, like 500 years from now, I think some people are probably going to be like, fuck, what was that destruction look like? It sounds really stupid because, like, in this moment, you're going to be like, you could just look it up and it'll be there. You can see some of the destruction. But I guess in the future, I'm just like, future generations, they're going to watch this and be like, well, fuck, now I got to go and do my research to see what was the actual damage done. I felt like they could have added a little bit to that. But that's such a minor gripe. Oppenheimer is such a great achievement. Like, it is a great achievement, and I'm so happy with the success that movie had. So yeah, that's my number 4 pick. Number 3 is Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Once again, people probably like, whoa, this isn't your second pick, because I think people will probably know what my first pick is. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse is a great achievement. I think it's not as good as the first one. I'm going to be honest. I think it's just because it is a part 1 out of a part 2. And this movie doesn't really get that resolution. Where it ends gets you really excited and amped up to see where does the story go. But it is very much half a story. You finish it, and it is now the waiting game. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse was a complete story. You watch that from beginning to end, and that has a definitive ending. I also think, too, with this one, it is so much more ambitious that sometimes I feel like it needs more time to kind of get the ball rolling. But I think it's going to be a payoff for the third one for sure. But yeah, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. What else can I say? All the art style is beautiful in this movie. The performances are all good. It is like the best animated superhero movie this year by far. Not even superhero movie, just the best animated movie this year. It really does kind of put a lot of the other studios to shame. I don't know, man. I know people really, really, really dislike how Sony has Spider-Man right, but I think they do get a lot more hits than misses. Venom, while I don't love Venom, like the Venom movies, they are like performance-wise really well done. The Spider-Mans and the MCU movies get really well received, and they do really well. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse is the first one was well received. That they made a second one, and this one performed extremely well. It's just they have some really good ideas, and like this is definitely the best multiverse superhero movie we have. Marvel is trying, MCU is trying really hard to do the multiverse, but look at Across the Spider-Verse, man. It is just so damn good. They do so many things right, and at the forefront, it is making you care about these characters. So yeah, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, great. So number 2 is gonna be a super shock. This is gonna be a shocker. John Wick Chapter 4. When I came out of this movie, I was like, this was good. This is a good movie. And then as time went on, I realized how fucking amazing this movie was. The first hour of this movie is pitch perfect to me. Seeing this in IMAX, this was the best experience on IMAX. Within the first 10 seconds of this movie starting, it was so damn loud, and I knew I was in for something very special. Watching this on the big screen, the action sequences, the spectacle, the set pieces blew my mind. There is action sequences in this movie that I vividly think about quite frequently. There is this one sequence in particular that is, it starts on like it starts on like this level, and eventually the camera pans and it goes up, and it's almost like you're above in the clouds watching him go through room to room, and it is just a one shot. I love one shots. One shots impress me so much. Sometimes I can tell their technique of like where they cut so then they can continue, but this was so fluent, and The music, there's club scene in here that had a really amazing action sequence too. This is just amazing. This was the same thing, about a 3 hour long movie. The budget was 100 million, so like 100 less than like some of these big like big $200 million movies, and it just puts it to shame. Holy shit. Um, while I think maybe the villain could have been a little bit better, this movie just delivered on what it was supposed to do, which is be a fun action movie that has set pieces that I just think blow the water out of everything else. So, you're probably wondering, if you're a brand new viewer, what's the first movie? And if you're know me in real life, or if you have any hunch of what it is, you're probably right. It's Guardians of the Galaxy 3. I don't know what to say. I'm biased. I can say that right off the bat, but I'm also very critical. Um, I can say this right off the bat. Guardians of the Galaxy 3, I was very, very nervous going into. I saw the trailers. I really liked the trailers, but I'm gonna be honest. The Guardians of the Galaxy Christmas special that came out, I thought it was okay. Like I thought it was decent. And when they said that they filmed them back to back, I was like, am I gonna like this as much as the other two? And I will say, it's definitely I think my least favorite out of the three. But this movie still impressed the hell out of me that they were able to finish off all the storylines very well. And the movie did something that I don't usually do in a lot of movies, which is cry about a fucking animated raccoon. That blows my mind. I think that's probably why this movie is my number one, is just the fact that like I have seen these characters for over 10 years, and it just hit me to the point where I realized these are like some of my favorite like sci-fi kind of characters, in the modern times. And I was worried that it was going to be a shitty ending for them, and I was so worried. And I think they delivered for the most part on everything that I wanted. Like when that movie ended, I left happy and sad because I was like, I'm glad that they got a good ending. I'm sad that I probably won't see these characters again. But I think it's also for the best, because right now, my opinion on the MCU is that it's not in a great state, and I'm happy that this was the best like MCU film by far that came out this year, and it hit on emotional levels. It's a darker film than the last two. I don't know, man. This movie just really hit for me. They have that one action sequence that's really awesome. I don't know what else to say. It's just I like that movie a lot. The villain was good. The fact that they did a lot of callbacks to the first movie. Um, Spoiler alert, like having Pete's grandfather back in the movie, I didn't think was going to be happening. Them bringing back a bunch of the other characters from the first one as well. It just felt like a love letter. Like you definitely felt like, wow, this is the end. We're going to try and bring in as many connections for like from the movies and stuff into this. And I really appreciate it. I also just appreciate how the movie is pretty much self-contained in the Guardians movies. Like, yes, you need to know what happened in Avengers Endgame with Gamora and or Infinity War and all that jazz, right? But for the most part, you don't get cameos from other characters and other MCU things. This is strictly just on the Guardians, and I really appreciate that for their last outing. I really, really do. So that was my top 15, you could say, top 10, and 5 memorable favorite movies of 2023. So, yes, that's going to be the first half. I'm going to do my the worst movies in just a second. So, I'm going to end this one, and then I'm going to do another one.